Part 1. The sky over Geneva was pale gray that morning, the kind of soft light that made the city feel quiet, even when it was not. Inside the Earth delegation building, the air hummed with tension. Men and women in simple suits sat around a long table, their faces tight with focus. At the head of the table stood Daniel Brooks. He was not a soldier or a general, but a diplomat, tall with tired eyes and a voice that never rose above calm. Beside him sat Lisa Morgan, her fingers tapping lightly on a tablet, her dark hair pulled back in a loose bun. She was a scientist, not a politician, but today she carried the weight of both. Outside, the world went on as usual. People walked dogs, bought coffee, argued about sports, but inside this room, a decision was about to be made that would change everything, not just for Earth, but for the whole galaxy. For over 40 years, Earth had been part of the Galactic Council. It was not the oldest member nor the strongest, but it had earned respect in its own way. Earth did not build war fleets like the Qatari. It did not control trade lanes like the Veln. What Earth offered was something quieter: ideas, medicine, music, and a stubborn belief in fairness. But over time, the Council had begun to ask for more, much more. They wanted full access to Earth's quantum encryption, the kind that kept human data safe from even the most advanced alien hackers. They demanded Earth share its fusion core blueprints without limits. And worst of all, they insisted Earth send its young people to serve in joint defense units far from home, with no guarantee they would ever return. Earth had said no. Again and again it had said no. Now the final vote was here. Daniel stood and cleared his throat. "We've debated this for months," he said, his voice steady. "We've listened to every warning, every threat, every plea. But the truth is simple. Earth joined the Council to cooperate, not to surrender." Lisa looked up from her tablet. "They act like we're being selfish," she said quietly. "But we're not hiding our tech to hoard it. We're protecting it because we've seen what happens when powerful tools fall into the wrong hands, even alien ones." A man named Alan Ruiz, Earth's president, sat at the far end of the table. He had flown in from Washington just last night. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. He nodded slowly. "The people voted," he said. "Not just our leaders. Millions of citizens across every continent. They want Earth to stand on its own. Not out of pride. Out of principle." The room fell silent. Then one by one the delegates raised their hands. Every single one. The vote was unanimous. At that exact moment, a signal was sent, not through radio waves or laser beams, but through the quantum entanglement relay, a network that linked Earth directly to the Council's central chamber on Viridia Prime. The message was short. Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. On Viridia Prime, the reaction was instant. The Qatari ambassador, a tall being with silver skin and eyes like black glass, let out a sharp hiss that echoed through the chamber. The Veln emissary, a soft-bodied creature wrapped in flowing silk, slumped forward, entering a deep trance, a sign of extreme distress in their culture. Other delegates shouted, some in anger, others in fear. A few simply stared at the message, unable to believe what they were seeing. Earth, the small blue world from the Sol system, was leaving. To many in the galaxy, Earth had always seemed odd. Its people were emotional, unpredictable, and oddly attached to things like poetry and old films. But over the decades, they had also become quietly essential. Earth's medical nanites had helped stop the Zorban plague that nearly wiped out 3 star systems. Its engineers had fixed the failing gravity stabilizers on the Ceres Minor trade hub. Even its strange music, full of guitars and voices singing about love and loss, had found fans on dozens of worlds. Now all of that would stop. Within minutes, the news spread. On the mining moon of Threx, workers paused as the announcement crackled over their comms. In the neon-lit streets of Nova Haven, traders dropped their datapads in shock. On a quiet farm world near the Andromeda border, a young girl named Mira asked her father, "Does this mean the Earth songs won't play on the radio anymore?" He didn't know what to say. Back on Earth, Daniel Brooks stepped out onto the balcony of the delegation building. The Geneva wind tugged at his coat. He looked up at the sky, not at the clouds, but beyond them, at the stars he knew were watching. Lisa joined him a moment later. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know we couldn't keep pretending." The Council wasn't asking for partnership anymore. They were asking for obedience. Inside, President Ruiz was already on a secure line with Earth's Defense Command. "Initiate protocol silence," he said. All off-world comms shut down. All ships recall to Sol system. Effective now. Across the planet, systems began to power down. The relay stations on the moon went dark. The deep space listening posts near Jupiter ceased broadcasting. Even the small research outposts on Mars sent their final logs and prepared to go quiet. In orbit, the last Earth freighter turned its nose toward home. Its captain, a woman named Nora Hayes, watched the stars through her viewport. She didn't speak. She just set a course for Sol and engaged the drive. On thousands of worlds, beings who had never set foot on Earth suddenly felt a strange emptiness, as if a light had gone out in a room they didn't know they were in. No one attacked. No one declared war. Not yet. But the silence that followed Earth's departure was louder than any explosion, and in that silence the galaxy held its breath. Part 2. 3 days after Earth left the Galactic Council, the silence began in earnest. It was not the kind of silence that came from emptiness but from absence, like a song that had played in the background of life for so long that no one noticed it until it stopped. On Earth, the change was immediate. All non-essential communication with off-world stations ceased. Ships that had been traveling to distant trade hubs turned around. Research teams on Mars packed up their gear and boarded return shuttles. Even the small cultural exchange programs, where Earth artists taught painting to Veln children or Qatari poets read their work in New York, were suspended. President Alan Ruiz stood in the situation room beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching a large screen display the status of every human vessel in space. One by one, green dots blinked as they entered Sol system boundaries. "Protocol silence is active," said General Nora Hayes, her voice calm but firm. She stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the map. "No outgoing signals. No incoming requests answered. We're dark." On the surface, life seemed normal. People went to work, children went to school, and evening news broadcasts talked about weather and sports. But everyone knew something had changed. The sky felt heavier. The stars, once full of promise, now seemed distant and cold. Lisa Morgan sat in her lab in Denver, staring at the quantum entanglement relay console. It was powered down, its lights dark. She had overseen its shutdown herself. That device had once linked Earth to the Council's data nexus, a vast network of knowledge shared by hundreds of species. Now it was just a box of silent metal. She missed the hum it used to make, a soft vibration that meant Earth was part of something bigger. But she also felt relief. No more demands. No more compromises that chipped away at Earth's freedom. Meanwhile, on the asteroid belt near Ceres Minor, a human merchant named Eli Wallace stood in his cramped shop, staring at a crate of Earth-grown coffee beans. Before the silence, these beans were common, shipped weekly, sold cheap. Now they were the last batch in the sector. A crowd had gathered outside his door, not shouting, just waiting. Word had spread fast. Earth goods were gone. No more coffee, no more chocolate, no more real cotton shirts. Synthetic replacements existed, but they weren't the same. Eli sighed and locked the crate away. He wouldn't sell it, not yet. He knew what was coming. Across the galaxy, confusion turned to worry, and worry turned to fear. The Qatari and Veln, two species that had kept a fragile peace for decades, began arguing over mining rights in the Helios Drift. Without Earth's diplomats to mediate, their talks broke down within hours. On the trade world of Nova Haven, the Galactic Credit Index dropped 20% in a single day. Investors pulled out of energy markets, fearing Earth would stop exporting its stable fusion cores. Hospitals on fringe worlds reported shortages of medical nanites, tiny machines Earth had supplied for years at cost, never for profit. In a small apartment on the moon of Threx, a young engineer named Chris Dawson watched the news with growing unease. He worked on Mars Colony Theta, maintaining the orbital defense sensors. Lately, those sensors had picked up strange activity. Unidentified ships hovering near the edge of the Sol system, scanning, probing, but never approaching. He reported it up the chain, but Command told him to log it and wait. "We're not looking for trouble," they said, "and we're not inviting it." But trouble had a way of finding silence. Back on Earth, Daniel Brooks met with a group of xenolinguists in a secure basement beneath the University of Chicago. They had been analyzing old deep space signals, recordings from probes launched centuries ago. One signal from a satellite called Voyager 2 had recently repeated a strange pattern. It wasn't alien. It was human, but the message embedded in its carrier wave made no sense. We were never alone. No one knew what it meant. Some thought it was a glitch. Others whispered it was a warning. While Earth turned inward, the galaxy spiraled outward into chaos. On the pleasure planet of Luma 9, riots broke out when a shipment of Earth-made painkillers failed to arrive. On the Qatari homeworld, military leaders held emergency sessions debating whether Earth's withdrawal was a prelude to war. The Velen sent 3 peace envoys toward Sol space, but all were turned back by Earth's newly activated defense perimeter. No explanation was given, just a simple message. Return to your systems. The message spread like fire. Earth had closed its doors, yet not everyone believed Earth had left out of fear or anger. Some remembered how Earth had quietly helped during the Zorban plague, sending supplies even when the Council refused to act. Others recalled how Earth scientists had shared clean water tech with desert worlds, asking for nothing in return. Now those same worlds felt abandoned. In a dusty town in Arizona, an old man named Ray sat on his porch, listening to a recording of Earth jazz on a vintage player. He had served on the first joint Earth-Qatari science mission 50 years ago. He remembered how hopeful everything felt back then. "They don't understand," he muttered to his dog. "Earth didn't leave because it didn't care. It left because it cared too much." Above him, a satellite passed silently through the night sky, part of Earth's new orbital shield, powered up for the first time in peacetime. Its sensors scanned the void, not for enemies but for signs of what might come next. On Mars, Chris Dawson received a new alert. Another unknown vessel had entered the outer belt. This one didn't scan. It broadcasted. A single tone repeating every 30 seconds. Human frequency, pre-protocol, but no one on Earth claimed it. He stared at the screen, heart pounding. Someone or something was testing the silence, and Earth for now said nothing. Part 3. Without Earth and the Galactic Council, the galaxy began to unravel faster than anyone expected. Old grudges that had slept for generations woke up hungry. The Qatari and Velen, once held in check by Earth's quiet diplomacy, now faced off over the Helios Drift, a stretch of space rich in rare minerals. Both sides claimed it. Neither would back down. Skirmishes broke out near the border stations. Ships fired warning shots. No one had died yet, but everyone knew it was coming. On trade worlds, markets crashed. The galactic credit lost more value each hour. People hoarded food, fuel, and medicine, afraid supplies would vanish. Earth had been the quiet backbone of the supply chain. Its fusion cores powered hospitals, its nanites healed wounds, its data networks kept systems running smoothly. Now replacements were slow, expensive, or simply didn't work as well. On the farming moon of Cylon 4, crops failed because the Earth-designed soil regulators stopped receiving updates. Farmers watched their fields turn gray and dry. Back on Earth, life remained calm on the surface, but beneath it, tension grew. General Nora Hayes stood in the command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain, watching live feeds from the outer solar system. Unidentified ships were now a daily sight. Some belonged to desperate traders hoping to sneak past the blockade. Others were military scouts from species Earth once called allies. None got close. Earth's defense grid, silent for decades, now hummed with power, ready to disable any vessel that crossed the boundary without permission. In Denver, Lisa Morgan worked late into the night. She and her team had recovered fragments of an alien archive from a derelict ship found drifting near Neptune. The ship was ancient, its design unlike anything in Council records. Inside, they found data crystals etched with symbols that matched no known language until they compared them to patterns in Earth's oldest cave paintings. The match was faint but real. Someone long ago had left a message meant for humanity. The decoded text spoke of a cycle, a time when many worlds joined together in peace, sharing knowledge and resources. But then one world, small, blue, full of life, chose to leave. Not out of anger, but as a test. The others could not hold together without it. War followed. Then silence. Then darkness. The records called it the Great Dimming. Entire star systems blinked out, not from bombs or plague, but from something deeper, something that fed on division. Lisa showed the findings to President Ruiz. He read the translation twice, then sat in silence for a long time. "So Earth didn't just walk away," he said finally. "We were supposed to see if the galaxy had grown strong enough to stand on its own, or if it still needed us," Lisa replied. Meanwhile, on Mars Colony Theta, Chris Dawson stared at his screen in disbelief. The mysterious signal, the repeating tone from the unknown ship, had changed. Now it carried a voice, faint, broken by static, but unmistakably human. It said only 2 words: "Remember Titan." Titan was one of Saturn's moons. Earth had a small research base there, abandoned years ago. No one had been there in over a decade. Chris reported it immediately. Within hours, a stealth scout was dispatched from Earth orbit. What it found shocked everyone. The base was not empty. Its power core was active. Its logs showed recent entries, written in a code used only by Earth's deep space exploration teams before the Council era. And in the main chamber, carved into the ice wall, was a symbol, a circle with a single line through it. The same symbol from the alien archive. Daniel Brooks flew to Titan in secret. He walked through the empty halls, his breath fogging in the cold air. In the central lab, he found a final message recorded by Dr. Elena Ruiz, President Ruiz's great-grandmother, a scientist who had vanished during an early deep space mission. Her face was tired but determined as she spoke to the camera. "If you're hearing this," she said, "then the Council has failed the test. They wanted unity, but only on their terms. True unity means choice. Earth must leave so they can learn what they've lost or prove they never needed us at all." She paused, then added, "But beware the Watchers. They sleep at the edge of the galaxy. They wake when the song of unity breaks." No one knew who the Watchers were, but the name sent a chill through Earth's leadership. As this discovery unfolded, chaos spread farther. On Ceres Minor, a mob stormed a warehouse believing it held hidden Earth supplies. It didn't. The violence left 7 dead. On Nova Haven, a Qatari warship fired on a Veln freighter, claiming it crossed into disputed space. The Veln retaliated. The Council called an emergency session, but without Earth's neutral voice, no agreement could be reached. The vote failed. Again and again it failed. Rumors began to fly. Some said Earth had developed a superweapon and was waiting to strike. Others claimed Earth had made a secret pact with an unknown power. A few fringe groups even preached that Earth was the ancient enemy foretold in old galactic myths, the silent seed that would one day return to reset the stars. In a quiet town in Oregon, a schoolteacher named Paul showed his students old videos of Earth's first contact with the Qatari. They were scared, he said, but they chose to talk, not fight. That's who we are. His students listened, but outside the sky was darker than usual, not from clouds but from the growing number of ships gathering at the edge of Sol space. Some curious, some angry, some afraid. Earth remained silent, but not passive. Deep in the Rocky Mountains, engineers worked around the clock to upgrade the planetary shield. In orbit, Captain Ryan Holt ran drills with his crew aboard the cruiser Aurora, practicing non-lethal takedowns and rescue ops. They weren't preparing for war. They were preparing for what came after, when the galaxy finally understood what it had lost. And somewhere far beyond the Milky Way, in the cold void between galaxies, something stirred. Not a ship, not a signal, just a shift in the dark, as if the universe itself had taken a breath. The spiral of panic was no longer just fear. It was becoming something worse, desperation, and desperation made beings do reckless things. The truth came slowly, like water rising in a sealed room. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. Earth had not left the Galactic Council because it was tired of sharing or because it wanted to hide. It had left because it knew something the others did not. Deep in classified archives, buried under layers of old security codes, scientists found records from the earliest deep space missions. Probes sent beyond the Kuiper Belt had detected strange energy patterns at the galaxy's edge, pulses that matched no natural phenomenon. They were too regular, too precise, and they grew stronger every time major civilizations fought or broke apart. Lisa Morgan sat in a dimly lit room beneath the University of Colorado, surrounded by holographic displays showing star maps and ancient signal logs. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her mind was sharp. She had matched the energy patterns to symbols found in the alien archive from Neptune and the carvings on Titan. All pointed to the same idea. The galaxy had been watched for longer than anyone knew. Not by gods or machines, but by something older, something that responded to unity or chaos like a living thing. She called it the Watcher Cycle. When civilizations came together in true cooperation, the pulses faded. When they turned on each other, the pulses grew. And when a key world, the anchor world as the old text called it, withdrew, the cycle reached its tipping point. If the rest of the galaxy could not hold together without that anchor, the Watchers would awaken. And when they did not conquer. They reset. They erased. They began again. Earth was that anchor. President Alan Ruiz read the full report in his private office. Rain tapped against the window. He thought of his great-grandmother's message on Titan. She had known. Maybe others before her had known too. They had kept it secret, not out of fear, but out of hope, that one day the galaxy would be ready to stand on its own. That it would choose unity not because it was forced, but because it understood its value. But now, the galaxy was failing the test. On the Qatari homeworld, war drums beat louder. Their fleet gathered near the Helios Drift ready to strike. The Veln had done the same. Trade routes shut down. Refugees fled border worlds. On Nova Haven, food riots turned into full-blown street battles. Hospitals ran out of basic medicines. A child on Cylon 4 died because a replacement part for a breathing machine, once made on Earth, could not be replicated in time. And still, Earth said nothing, but not everyone on Earth agreed with the silence. In Houston, a group of engineers argued in a garage-turned-workshop. They believed Earth had a duty to help, even if it broke protocol silence. "We didn't leave to punish them," said a young technician named Jake. "We left to teach them. But you don't let someone drown while you wait for them to learn to swim." His words spread quietly through underground networks, not rebellion but concern, a growing feeling that maybe the lesson had gone on long enough. Meanwhile, General Nora Hayes received new intel. Rogue factions, made up of desperate merchants, ex-soldiers, and fringe cultists, were planning to raid Earth's outer colonies. They believed Earth was hoarding technology and resources. They thought if they could capture a fusion core or a nanite factory, they could sell it for enough credits to survive the collapse. Hayes ordered all defense posts to highest alert. No warnings this time. Any unauthorized ship crossing the boundary would be disabled instantly. But the real threat wasn't from raiders. It was from the silence itself. On Mars, Chris Dawson noticed something strange. The mysterious signal, the one that said, "Remember Titan," had stopped. In its place, a new pattern emerged. Not human, not Qatari or Veln. It was smooth, deep, and slow like a heartbeat from a giant. He ran it through every decoder. Nothing matched. Then he tried comparing it to the energy pulses from the galaxy's edge. The match was perfect. The Watchers were stirring. Lisa Morgan got the data an hour later. Her hands shook as she showed it to Daniel Brooks. "They're not just watching anymore," she said. "They're listening. And what they hear is chaos." Brooks stared at the screen. "Then we were wrong," he said quietly. "We thought leaving would force them to grow up. But all we did was remove the one thing holding the dam together." Back in Geneva, President Ruiz called an emergency meeting with Earth's top advisors. For the first time since the withdrawal, they debated re-engaging with the galaxy. Not to rejoin the Council, but to send a message. A warning. A hand reaching out before it was too late. But how? Any signal they sent could be seen as weakness or manipulation. Any ship they sent could be attacked or captured. They needed proof, something undeniable that would make the galaxy listen. Then Lisa had an idea. Deep in Earth's archives was a recording from the very first Council meeting. It showed representatives from dozens of species standing together, promising to build a future based on mutual respect. At the center of it all was an Earth delegate, smiling, hopeful, holding a small plant from Earth as a gift. The moment had been forgotten, buried under years of bureaucracy and compromise. But it was real, and it was powerful. "We show them what they lost," Lisa said. "Not with weapons. Not with threats. With memory," Ruiz agreed. But they would not broadcast it openly, not yet. They would wait for the right moment, the moment when the galaxy was ready to hear it. In orbit, Captain Ryan Holt reviewed emergency protocols. His ship, the Aurora, was ready. Not for war, for rescue, for hope. And far beyond the stars, the heartbeat grew louder. Part 5. The call came from Epsilon 9, a small research colony on the edge of human-explored space. It was not part of Earth anymore, not officially, but it had been built with Earth's help, run by scientists from a dozen nations, and powered by an old fusion core made in Detroit. Now it was under attack. Pirates armed with scavenged Qatari weapons and fueled by desperation had overrun the station. They took control of the life support systems and demanded ransom in credits, fuel, and weapons. The colonists, mostly engineers, doctors, and students, had no defense. No way to fight back. No one to call, except Earth. The message reached Sol system through a broken emergency beacon, bouncing off 3 dead satellites before landing in General Nora Hayes' command center. She read it twice, then looked at President Ruiz, who had just entered the room. "Protocol silence says we don't respond," she said. "But those people are ours." Even if the galaxy forgot, Ruiz didn't answer right away. He walked to the window and looked out at the Rocky Mountains, snow-capped and still. He thought of the Watchers, of the heartbeat growing louder at the edge of everything. He thought of the child who died on Ceylan 4. He thought of his great-grandmother's voice on Titan saying, "True unity means choice." Then he turned. "Send the Aurora," he said. "But tell Captain Holt, no weapons. Only rescue. Only peace." Within minutes, the Aurora launched from Lunar Dock. Captain Ryan Holt stood on the bridge, his crew silent behind him. They all knew this broke protocol silence. They also knew it was right. The ship slipped past Earth's defense grid, not as a threat, but as a promise. It took 37 hours to reach Epsilon 9. When they arrived, the pirates were drunk on stolen rations, arguing over how to split the loot. They never saw the Aurora coming. Holt used Earth's stealth tech, developed not for war but for search and rescue in hostile zones, to dock silently on the far side of the station. His team moved like shadows. They cut power to the pirates' weapons, flooded the main hall with sleep gas, disabled the comms so no distress call could go out. In less than 20 minutes it was over. Not a single shot fired. Not a single life lost. Then Holt did something unexpected. He opened a public channel, not just to Earth, to the whole galaxy. "Epsilon 9 is secure," he said, his voice calm. "All colonists are safe. We are Earth vessel Aurora. We came not to claim, not to conquer, but to help, because that is who we are." The message spread faster than any signal in history. On Nova Haven, traders stopped shouting and listened. On the Qatari warship hovering near the Helios Drift, the captain paused his attack order. On a refugee camp on Ceylan 4, a mother held her child and cried. For the first time in weeks, someone had chosen kindness over fear. Within hours, ships from a dozen species gathered at the edge of Sol system, not to attack, but to ask. They sent simple messages. "Will you return? Can we talk?" We were wrong. President Ruiz did not go to Viridia Prime. He did not stand in a grand chamber. He sat in a small studio in Denver, with plain walls and a single camera. He wore no uniform, just a dark shirt. When the broadcast began, billions watched. "We left," he said, "not because we stopped caring, but because we wanted to know if you cared too. The Council asked for our tools, our ships, our secrets, but it never asked for our trust. True unity isn't built on rules or quotas. It's built on respect, on choice, on helping others even when you don't have to." He paused. "We are not rejoining the old Council. That system is broken. But if you want to build something new, with Earth as one voice among equals, not a servant or a ruler, then we are ready to listen." The response was slow at first. Then it grew. The Veln sent a delegation. The Qatari lowered their weapons. Even the fringe worlds, the ones Earth had never visited, sent messages of thanks. Not for saving Epsilon 9, but for reminding them what they had forgotten. Lisa Morgan watched from her lab as the first joint proposal arrived. A new framework called the Coalition of Equals. No single leader. No forced sharing. Just cooperation by choice. She smiled for the first time in months. Daniel Brooks stood on a hill outside Geneva looking up at the stars. The silence was gone. In its place was something fragile but real. Conversation. Deep in space, the heartbeat from the galaxy's edge slowed. Then stopped. The Watchers had heard. And they slept once more. On Mars, Chris Dawson saw the change in the data streams. The chaos was fading. The signals were calming. He leaned back in his chair and whispered, "We made it." Back on Earth, children played in parks. Farmers planted seeds, artists painted. And in a quiet garage in Houston, Jake turned on an old radio and played an Earth song, one about coming home. The galaxy would never be perfect, but it had chosen to try again, and this time, it would not take Earth's quiet light for granted. Because sometimes the loudest act of courage is simply showing up when no one asks you to.